Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Dear Journal, it's day 300 of the lockdown. I believe I've lost my mind. My eyes are bleeding from binge watching The Office
on Netflix.
My children have all died because I quit taking care of them. I lost interest in both their education and their physical well-being. I have boarded myself in my room, hoping to survive the last days. That's what it feels like. I think some people feel like they're kind of in an end of the world apocalyptic scenario, but it's about to end.
You think?
Yeah, I mean, Trump's already talking about, like, hey, here's the plans.
Yeah, that's nice.
Governors, do whatever you want, but here's the plans to get this country back on track.
I have a friend who's a mom who was like, I think I might buy my kids some animals just until Corona's over.
What?
And then sell them when it's done.
Or flush them.
Or flush them.
Well,
you're the worst.
Your usefulness is over. Whoosh.
That's imagining you get animals small enough to flush.
That is real. But at this point, like if I was going to do something to entertain my kids, it'd be like, here's a hamster. He's got to fit down the toilet.
That's the worst. You're the worst. Okay, well, we hope you're out there doing well and surviving. This is just your friendly reminder that you really have a great opportunity right now to dig into hope and truth and trust and choosing what you want to believe about your future.
Yeah.
So we have a friend, this isn't what we're talking about at all, but we have a friend, Paul Young. He's been on here before. Not actually this one. He will be soon.
Yeah, he's going to be on soon.
But he's always talking about future tripping, which is imagining a future that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Without the grace for it. And I think part of the paralyzing thing for lots of people is they're imagining the future, but they don't have all the pieces.
Yep.
And so they can just easily feel depressed or go hopeless.
But your puzzle ain't complete.
It ain't complete, yo.
So stop trying to build it.
Trop it.
Trop it.
Just trop
it like it's hot. Hey, so talking about coronavirus and
surviving by watching Netflix.
Yes. We have spent some time within the last month and watched a little show they call Love is Blind.
Dun, 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 dun. This is neither an endorsement or an unendorsement, but this is Pop Culture Podcast.
It sure is, and it's going to speak to your world right now.
No, really. We're going to break down what we saw as like the human dynamics that pretty much show up everywhere inside that show, because it felt like as like life consultants, me and you were like dying.
There was such a mixture of like rolling my eyes, laughing out loud, and then actually being like, oh, I get it.
So relatable.
It's so relatable. And I understand why that's happening and what's going on inside of that space. And some of you, this might actually probably be your little secret indulgence, right? Because Love is Blind was like at number one forever on Netflix. So you at least like hit play for a second, was like, what is happening here? But we're going to talk really quickly about what the basis of Love is Blind is about, if you haven't watched it already.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get into the relationship dynamics,
the human dynamics, and kind of just
pitfalls of this show,
and the beauty,
and
kind of just some of the wisdom that we have along those lines for people who may be in those situations. So whether or not you've seen it, you can actually still pick up on lots of things, like how to not chase after people who don't love you.
Yeah. So without further ado, Love is Blind. So Love is Blind is a television show based around the idea that people would take turns, almost kind of like speed dating at some level, separated into two different rooms where they cannot see each other.
Nope.
So
they all you hear each other.
is that buttery voice on the other side.
I would have picked you based on your voice.
Would you have?
Yeah, it's so good. I just got a little like butterfly inside.
Oh, you did.
I did.
You'll get a ton of butterflies if you go and purchase the Tree of Life audiobook when that comes out.
Oh my gosh, I'm freaking out because you are working on it and I've heard some of the samples and I am overwhelmed by how good it is.
So besides my sexy voice, back to Love is Blind, all you can hear is the other person's voice. And you're having to have these dates based on just hearing someone else's voice.
And you're not doing anything. So you're actually talking and having in-depth conversations.
And a conversation before sex?
What?
That's absurd.
It's crazy. And so they talk and then they kind of find the people that they really like. And then what happens is if they like each other enough, they have to propose in order to see each other. They don't get to meet.
They have to propose. They can't just decide like, oh, we're going to meet in person without some level of commitment.
Yeah.
Which, first and foremost, it's this big, grandiose social experiment for at least reality television that's really having the conversation about...
is love based on looks?
Yeah, or is it based on heart connection? How does love evolve from those places? I still think it was done as good as one of these shows could be done. How about I put it that way?
Maybe if they could have given it
for I'm talking about the reality segment that's been doing it.
Yeah, I think had this been like a much longer, like it would have been way more interesting to me if they would have talked longer before they proposed and then had longer when they proposed to decide if they wanted to get married.
Totally.
But they want to rush film these things, so it was like, get it out there. So anyway, they get engaged. Several couples get engaged, and then they have to decide. They plan a wedding, and they have to decide. They have to say on the altar if they're choosing yes or no. They don't get to say it before. So then, that's drama. I hate a lot of the ways they did the show, but some of it was interesting. Right.
So again, how long did they have? A couple weeks of talking eventually that were locked in?
I think they had 2 weeks before they got engaged.
So they went on many dates.
A week or two.
Multiple dates maybe in the first week. By the second week, they're locked into maybe one person close to at that point.
And they could be spending hours with them a day.
Right. All day long, just talking about...
I don't know how many hours.
Right.
Yeah.
So as that's evolving, again, I think that this is very unique given our society. Like, hey, is there a human connection?
Yes.
That's actually here that has nothing to do with, I just want to bang you.
Yeah. And it was really interesting because a lot of them were like, oh, I've never talked about this kind of stuff with people I've dated before. Oh, I've never been so vulnerable. Oh, I've never shared this. And it's fascinating to me and just reminding me that it's so easy to live in this culture without ever having real, deep, meaningful conversations with people about what's really going on inside of you.
Yep. And people go years actually inside of marriages where they never have real deep. In fact, recently I was talking to someone and she was saying that her and her husband hadn't ever talked about her greatest fear.
Yeah.
11 years into marriage.
Yeah.
She had a simple, wild, great fear that like, if people knew this about me, they would think that I was ... And, and I'm like, well, what does your husband say when you've shared that with him? She's like, oh, I've never told him that. And I'm like, how could you get 11 years in? But that's the reality. We go years without this type of connection.
Oh, yeah. And so something about them being behind the wall, I think made people feel safe. Like they thought, oh, I'm actually going to like this person I can't see them. So if they reject me.
Right.
Okay. You know, like something about it made it feel safer. So you watched people bring down their guards. They would say things they wouldn't. And for that part of the TV show, I really enjoyed it because it was bringing people back to having real connection.
Yeah.
My dad has said this to me before, because I have challenging conversations with him where we talk through all of the things and my feelings and his feelings. And I'll say, this is what it felt like as a kid. And he'll say, oh, I'm so sorry. That's not how I meant it. But
yeah,
he's told me, he's mentioned several times, I wish I would have had conversations like this with my dad. I never got to have these conversations. I never got to know what my dad thought about me. I never got to know it. He goes, I don't know if he liked me.
Wow.
Now, obviously he, like on some level he knows
right,
it.
But didn't have the type of dialogue that was
but
very
he was like, I was so scared of rejection, I didn't ask him the questions I was really longing to hear from him. And so he never did it. And now my grandpa died years ago. And actually, when my grandpa died is when my dad started being able to have really good conversations with me. And I remember the first conversation we had that was so significant was him saying, there's a lot of things I didn't get to talk through with my dad, and I don't ever want that to be like that with us. And that's when he changed in his openness to having those dialogues with me.
Because he realized the pain of it after dad dies and goes, I need to have this.
Yeah. And he realized, we never had that kind of intimacy. I want to be known. And it was crazy because after that happened, after his dad died, then he told me his life story. I didn't know a lot about his life story. But the reason I'm bringing this up is this is a beautiful part of humanity, is that we get to have intimacy. We get to know each other and we get to be known. But so much of us are living in shame and fear that we hide in our little box and never let anyone see us and never let anyone know us. And being known and being known is all of the things. It's sharing your dreams. For some people I know, sharing your dreams are more vulnerable
than sharing your fear.
Yeah.
Actually just saying, here's the dream I have. It's,
Oh, yeah. I shared something with you today about a dream for our future, and then immediately was like, hold me.
I feel so vulnerable.
I feel vulnerable. And then sharing your fears with people, sharing your insecurities with people. This is what being known is. And so I liked that the show was kind of aiming that is a valuable thing we've lost in society today, because most of the time when we're dating, we're trying to hook the other person, not show who we are.
Yes, absolutely. Playing a game. And so the games all went away inside of that. And I think that's...
they didn't all go away.
But they didn't. But a lot of the game was starting to be stripped away.
Yes.
So there are some games. We're going to talk about some of the games and what we play in our human dynamics, because we want to go deeper into what makes relationships successful that this show was showing, and what are some of these detriments that we see blaringly on this screen.
Blaringly. Yeah. So let's start with one of my favorite quotes is one of the consultants that we've trained up. So if people don't know, we're life consultants, and then we've trained a bunch of life consultants. So if you want somebody to meet with you who can help you, we have them. But she said this line that was so brilliant. She goes, a lot of them said, I feel like I've known you for longer than this time. I feel like I've known you forever. And she goes, this is her line. You have. They're your mom. They're your dad.
You've
good. Known them forever because they feel familiar, because they are the exact dysfunction that you grew up with.
And it's interesting because they literally pick that. They didn't even see the person. They just talk for a little bit and I don't know, I'm just so attracted to this person. Why? It's my childhood.
Something about you feels exactly like what I know.
Familiarity.
Yes. So let's talk really quick about Damien and Gianna.
Oh, Damien and Gigi. So you have Damien and Gigi, and they were a fiery couple.
Oh, they reminded me of us 1,000,000%.
They did. Damien
when we got married, not now.
Yeah. But Damien was like this tall, redheaded guy, and he had a little bit more calm and cool collectiveness about him at some level. And she was more like this fireball who was explosive. And then all of a sudden, they would go from, I love you so much to, I'm going to murder you. What's wrong with you? You don't listen to me.
Oh, yeah. They fought.
And you'd watch as Gigi would spin out and all of a sudden go into these harsh, cutting remarks towards Damien. And then he would be like, you're just trying to push me away. This is what you do. But as I watched those fights, I was like, we were in a couple hundred of those.
A couple hundred of those. Well, one of the things I thought about them is they learned how to bond through intensity.
Yes.
And so I was thinking about that when me and you got married, we bonded through intensity. Like a lot of and that was part of our intimacy, was this like the spark of fire.
Yeah. You needed to get me angry so that you could feel close.
Yeah. and you needed to get angry so that I don't know why you needed to get angry, but there was this definite, like, when you grow up and there is intensity around you, you often are either poking the person that you're with or pushing them. I'm trying to get you to like lash out at me.
I remember there was a thought my mom would, or a phrase my mom would say, and she'd be like, I just need you to feel something, Bob. Why don't you feel anything? And so it'd be like, beep, 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 beep. Trying to get some sort of reaction. Yes.
And there's this thing when we feel insecure and we don't feel loved, what we want to do is we want to know that someone will fight for us, that somebody will come through for us.
Will you choose me?
Yes. And so there's this thing that we do where we are like just trying to see how much passion is in there. The other thing that happens, and I know this happened in our relationship, if you have abandonment issues.
Yeah.
You're poking to see if you can get them to abandon you.
What is the point that I'm safe enough? How bad can I really be until you decide enough is enough and you walk out on me completely?
And I want to see if I can get you to walk out on me so that I don't have to keep bonding to you.
Yeah, and so I don't have to be on edge.
Right.
Like, not keep bonding to you, but I don't have to be living on edge waiting for the other shoe to drop and be surprised by you just walking out suddenly. Yeah.
It's like a huge fear. I mean, we're saying this, but I never consciously thought that when I was poking at you.
When we talk about these things, you might be like, I've never thought that way.
Totally.
Yeah, most people don't.
Yeah.
So that's where you have to get under the surface and check in with your heart and be like, you know what? That does sound familiar to our relationship. It does seem like we have a lot of explosions. It does seem like I act out. I wonder, maybe I am trying to see if this person's going to abandon me.
Well, and maybe it's not even just an explosion. It's just that you poke, like you just go at them until they explode. I remember there being times in our relationship where, because once you exploded, I was very clear. Like you exploding actually got me into clarity.
Yeah.
I was more clear when you were exploding than probably when you weren't. And so there can be these internal drivers in us where we adamantly think that we're emotional about the situation in front of us. Like we adamantly are like, no, it's about this. You didn't flush the toilet, like whatever it is. We honestly think it's about that. But actually inside there's a current of emotion that is driving us because of fear of intimacy.
I think also another fear on you. I mean, as we're just playing counselor over here and assessor, I think your fear was of the monster you didn't know versus the monster you did know. So with your childhood, like it'd be easier to just know how angry is dad and how can he act out? How much is he going to act out? So it's easier to be like, let me just see you explode, Justin, so that I can see the monster I'm dealing with rather than feeling like, oh, there might be some anger inside of him. I don't know what that monster could be and how it could act out. So let me just push until I just get it to the surface and I can deal with the damn thing already.
Totally. There's, they say that there's stages of relationship. And so the first one is the fantasy stage. And it's interesting when you watch Love is Blind.
Oh, absolutely. They're jumping in each other's arms after 1 week.
Oh my gosh.
You're the best. I love you.
I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And you're like, you don't even know that person.
No, that person's a closet murderer.
And then, the next stage is the negotiation of needs stage. And that is who's going to get their needs met? Are both of our needs going to get met? Are you going to love me? Am I going to love you? Are we going to, when we see the messy,
are we going to be heard?
When I see the messiest parts of you, will I still choose you? The third part of the love, which you can't get to on Love is Blind, is called mature love. And that's after years. And I think that me and you have mostly reached that.
Yes.
Where
I'd agree.
I actually know.
It says it takes 10,000 hours or 10 years of chipping away at something to become a master at anything. So we crossed 11 years and we're going on 12.
We're almost to 12.
Yeah, we got our PhD on this one.
Yes. But But mature love is where you actually know that the other person considers you, cares about you, and you feel safe in the connection. So you're no longer trying to sabotage or trying to get them to reject you, or like you're not playing emotional games anymore because you feel safe.
So much trust
in love.
Yep, settled into it.
No, that's not actually I know tons of couples who don't hit mature love until they've been married 40 years. I know other
agree,
couples,
because they're not actually engaging the process. They're just still surviving.
Yeah. And if you're not dealing with your fears and your abandonment and your rejection and your triggers from your childhood and how the other person reminds you of them, then you'll stay in the negotiation of needs phase. And listen, there's no shame in any of the phases, but the goal would be that your love is growing towards mature love.
Yeah. I want to talk about another one of the couples that stood out to me.
I bet I have a guess, but go ahead.
I want to talk about Lauren and Cameron.
Oh, okay.
That's actually the one I want to jump into. Because,
all right.
Well, is it Lauren and Cameron? No, let's talk about Carlton and Diamond.
I knew it. I knew that was the next one you were going to go to.
It's not Lauren and Cameron.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you have Carlton and Diamond, and they're such an interesting couple. How would I explain them? Carlton and Cameron, completely in love with each other in the first week.
Carlton and Diamond.
Carlton and Cameron. Carlton and Diamond.
Yeah.
So in love with each other. Smitten from the get-go. And when they get on the other side.
Carlton has a secret. And he has it from the beginning.
Secrets.
And the secret is that he's had a past where he's bisexual.
Right.
And he has so much shame about it.
Immense amounts of shame.
So much shame. And so he says to the camera, I'm not telling her because I don't think she'll love me if I tell her.
She won't choose me.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to get a fair shake at this whole thing by, hey, maybe if she can see enough of me, she'll bond to me. And then she'll have enough buy-in.
Yeah.
And then she'll be okay with this situation.
Right.
So he starts it on a horrible premises, which is, I'm just going to hide this whole part of myself.
Yeah, secrecy is rough.
Yeah,
and
super rough.
It always blows up in your face. Like, here's what I found in relationships. Whatever your fear is, you often will create.
Yep.
So his fear is this girl is going to leave me because of this secret. So they end up meeting in person. Yeah. He proposes, they meet in person, and then he's weird with her immediately.
Was it immediately? Yeah. I thought it had a little bit of a build.
He starts to get weird with her, and she's like,
and
what?
Distant and disconnected.
And she can recognize it. She's like, what just happened?
Why is this so different?
Well, and he's poking at her. He starts to make kind of dodgy comments about her. It kind of mean, and she's like, what is happening?
Yeah, why is this person going after me? And so all of a sudden he's kind of like pushing back, like, hey, will you really choose me? And also, I'm going to make a villain out of this person somehow. It feels like he's creating a villain so that he'll have an escape, and he can already be like, she's terrible if he shares this with her and he gets rejected.
Right.
Is what it felt like. I don't know. But so he goes into...
Again, no one is doing that consciously.
Yeah, it's all unconscious. Yeah. But you just see this thing like manifest.
You see where he's all of a sudden like he's been nice and loving the whole time, and now he's saying kind of like just grumpy statements.
Right. And so you're like, who is this monster?
Well, he wasn't a monster yet.
Right. But you slowly grow into who is this monster that came out of nowhere? So he begins to share finally at this poolside. He's like, I have something I have to tell you, but I can't tell you. And you can feel his anxiety. Yeah. It's going through the roof, and he already is communicating, you will reject me.
Totally.
He believes
He's expecting it.
He's expecting it.
Yeah.
He's setting her up to reject him. And then he begins to share his story.
Yeah.
Hey.
And I think she responds really well. She's very compassionate. She's kind. She's listening. And then she sets a good boundary, which is, I think I need to go process all of this.
Right. Because she's just trying to figure out what to do with it. And especially because of how intense his emotions are.
Yeah.
It's already telling her you should feel bad about this situation. If he would have been like, oh yeah, my past is this, she'd be like, oh, that's...
Let's
interesting.
Talk through that.
We should probably talk about that, but he's okay with this. I guess this isn't that big of a deal. Maybe I'm,
Well, and this is what it made me think of. It made me think, oh, he's probably not told a lot of people, or whoever he's telling. Like, it doesn't look like he has practice owning his story.
Right. Or the people he has told have been very shaming and condemning towards him. Right. So he only has a couple archetypes of what happens.
Yeah.
And so now he's just like, all right, here goes.
So they go into separate places. She begins to process.
No, he exploded.
Not when she left.
He threw his hat off, didn't he?
No,
he
no,
was
no.
Like, wah!
I don't.
Maybe
remember.
not in that one. I don't know. I thought he did.
Okay. So she comes back the next morning and she wants to talk. She wants to ask questions. She wants to understand. And like 1 or 2 questions in. And
he gets explosive for sure.
He explodes. And everything becomes now that she's homophobic, that she's like so
callous, hardened, doesn't care, or judgmental, almost like, again, he created a villain all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do inside of relationships is when we carry shame about something, we want to push and push and push. And then when someone gives their honest reactions, we want to vilify them if it doesn't line up with making us feel better about the shame that we're carrying. Yeah,
you could tell that he wanted, it was very unrealistic what he wanted from her because she was like, I thought I knew everything about you. Now I don't know what, like it threw her off. Like when you find out someone's lied to you, you're like, I don't know what to trust about you. I don't know. And they'd only been talking a week. So it'd be real confusing to feel like you knew everything, but this huge piece you didn't know. And so because of I think he wanted her to be like, yeah, of course I'm in. It doesn't matter at all, without her needing to have conversations, to ask questions, to understand, which I think is so important. And oftentimes when we have shame, we want the other person to manage our shame.
Yes.
I want your response to make me feel better.
To make me feel happy and safe. I want you to not have any bad emotions right now.
Because it's not, I'm loving me.
Yes.
It's like, I'm not going to love me if you don't love me. So it's high stakes. If you abandon me, it probably means everyone will abandon me. If you if you're not in it with me, then I'm not going to be met ever. So it becomes this very high stakes thing.
Yep. So she all of a sudden is put in a position of having to be a source or his God, so to say. I need you to be my source of love that tells me that I'm all good. And if it's not, then I'm angry. I'm angry because I'm never going to get love and everything else that I need.
Yeah. And I mean, then it gets vicious. Then they
he ends up blowing up, calling her a bitch and making fun of her wig or something like that. Or just
it felt really cutting and low.
It was very humiliating. And he goes out to humiliate her and make her feel the shame he has inside of his own heart.
Which this is something that is so true. When we have shame and we feel rejected by somebody, we instantly decide, you're the problem.
Yep.
Because if you're the problem, I don't have to hate myself. I don't have to feel bad about myself.
Yep. So what that evolves into, we look at that scenario and we go, of course she walked away from him. This guy feels unstable. She barely knows him. He's explosive. His shame is driving his life. If he's this unsafe, this explosive, when he's got cameras all around him, when he's like only a few seconds into this situation, this guy's probably going to beat me if I get into a relationship with him. Nothing about him is safe.
When I watched it, I thought, I don't think the issue is even that his past for her.
I don't think she walked away at all because of his past. I don't think that
it was like
core.
Immediately when they started connecting, he started jabbing at her.
Right.
And then he told her this story and didn't give her any space to talk, ran over her when she wanted to ask questions. She came very calm and civilized. And so I'm watching
tried to set healthy boundaries even.
Yes. So I thought the same thing. I don't think she broke up with him. I mean, she ended up leaving, but obviously you're watching them and you're like, you should not be together. But I thought you could tell, you watched the reunion and he like really is sad and wishes that they could be friends. You could tell, I think he like really genuinely thought he loved her. And he feels, but he still doesn't feel like, I think as long as you have shame, you can't take full ownership.
Yep. And so when again, you watch it, you go, he's in a full on triggered state.
Yes.
He's not his adult, the logical self.
Yeah. You can see. And I think that's why I like watching shows like this. When I'm helping people understand emotional intelligence, like when he switches, if you're watching, you can actually see when he switches from adult version of him in the conversation to triggered state, little kid throwing a fit to protect himself.
Absolutely.
And we all do that.
Yep. There's another couple I want to talk about. What's their name that they broke up? I'm trying to think of their
Mark
name.
and Jessica.
Mark and Jessica.
Dun, 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 dun,
So Mark
dun,
and
dun.
Jessica are a very interesting couple because they highlight something inside of us as human beings.
Yes, this is a huge common theme in humanity.
I want what I can't have.
Yes. So here's the tricky thing. Jessica actually was talking to Mark and Barnett, which were both separate people. And she was going to break up with Mark in order to be with Barnett, but then he chose a different girl and she was devastated. And then as a second place chose Mark.
Poor Mark.
No, not poor Mark.
That's right. Not poor Mark. Be powerful, Mark.
Yeah.
Kick her to the curb.
No, but he knew. He knew that she had thought that she wanted to be with Barnett.
And
so,
we watch as Mark spirals into codependency.
Yes, this is the typical codependent relationship where one person is like, I'll have no needs in order to make sure that you're happy.
I know I can love you enough. I can love you so much. You'll love me. You'll choose me.
I can love you like no one's ever loved you before. We can make it through this.
Absolutely. And she's just on the fence like, I don't know if I'm really that attracted to him. She's saying behind the scenes, which is, it's like honest.
That's fair.
And I think that that's totally fair.
Yeah.
That he's not her type.
Right.
But she decides to just ride the train on this.
The thing is that she still likes the guy who didn't choose her. And I think this is really what I want to talk about their relationship is, and she said, this is the type of guy I've been drawn to my whole life. Well, obviously she's single. It's never worked for her. But there is pretty much so many humans, guys and girls. It's not just a girl thing. We choose emotionally unavailable people because we are trying. We think that if we get, now I'm going to be honest. I did this my whole life, right? I chose emotionally unavailable men. Now, I chose them to be best friends with. I was always best friends with an emotionally unavailable man, which meant they were basically narcissistic. Like, I remember when I had...
This is the only reason I got you.
Yes.
It's because I was like, I'm not sure if I want to marry her for a second.
No, this is legit real. Like, God tricked me because you are emotionally available, which is awesome.
I actually am. But I wasn't in that because I was actually trying to choose what I wanted.
Yeah. So my first best friend, like, we would talk about his life for hours. We would listen to, he was a musician, a kind of music that I don't like. I can't tell you how many. Okay, I had at least 3 guy best friends who were all musicians. I actually had more than that. I probably had like 6 different ones throughout my life.
You dated a guy that was a musician.
Also that. Yeah, I was drawn to musicians. But 3 of the musicians, I hated the music. And I listened to them play for hours.
That sounds like torture.
Well, no, I didn't even think about it as torture because my idea of love was just like, I have no needs, I have no voice, I have none of my own opinions. Whatever you like, I like too. Like, I was Mark. Like, I will like meet you where you're at. I'll love you with what you think is interesting. And there is the reason I did it, which is why I'm bringing it up, is we have this drive. For me, it was like, I experienced that in my family. And so there's this thing inside of you that's like, if I can find somebody just like that emotionally unavailable person in my life, but I can convince them to be emotionally available for me.
You won.
I won. And I see this, people get addicted to this.
Absolutely.
They get addicted to the chase. I've watched it happen over and over again.
That's why people, even on the show, end up single on the other end of the show.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk further about that. But you're single for late years into your life. And that's not all of them. I'm not saying everyone. But there's a lot of people that go single for years and years in their life because of this addiction.
Because they chase unavailable men. Or women. Yeah, they're always finding... I can't tell you how many clients... I ask every client when they tell me who they like to show me pictures of the person that they like so that I can understand what types of people they're going after. And typically from pictures, I can already tell. When I can see what their Instagram looks like, I can tell. 90% of the men that my clients go after are ones that I know will never choose them. will never, ever.
This guy's not going to choose you.
They're not even, you guys don't even have similar interests. You don't, but like you see him as the Mecca. You see him, if I win that, then it means I'm worthy. Then it means, I'm special. Then it means I'm worth something. And guys do this too. If I can get a girl that pretty, if I can date a girl who's that popular, if I can, then that means that I'm significant. And so they chase after, and most of the time it's because they're deathly afraid of real intimacy, of actually being known and actually being chosen.
And here's what happens when you land one of these impossible catches.
Yeah.
So you land this impossible catch. I did it. I won. I got the person that no one else could get. And now I'm 10 years into the marriage and I hate them. And I'm bitter and resentful because they're not connective. They're just not vulnerable and intimate with me. Yeah, you were terrified of vulnerability and intimacy. That's why you chose this person in your game and you won the game. You were just trying to play a game and he fit the game you wanted or she fit the game you wanted. And now you're angry at them.
Totally. Well, okay. You're being generous though, because I was going to say a lot of people, and I have experienced it myself and I've watched clients do it and friends do it. They win the game as soon as the person's interested in them. Then they break up.
That happens too.
Because they're like, oh, I got you. Oh, wait, I was getting.
I don't feel the butterflies anymore. I don't know. The butterflies just went away. They're gone. Where'd they go?
Yeah, because the fantasy, I had a fantasy of who you were. And now that I got you, it didn't actually fill this hole inside of my heart. It didn't actually fix me. I still feel that hole. So now I'm going to blame you for it. It must be because you're not the right person. That's why. Because if you were the right person, it would have filled this hole.
The truth is you can make marriage work.
Analogy.
Wow. The truth is you can make marriage work with a rock if it had the right ingredients in it. Does it?
Could you?
No, you couldn't.
No,
you couldn't. But the reality, jokes aside.
Nobody out there go marry a rock. That's not what we're saying.
But the reality is that most people could do marriage pretty well if you have a few foundational components of wanting to learn and grow and things like that. And that's why, back in the day, arranged marriages worked just fine. I mean, of course, there was,
horrible ones. And
No. Of course, there were mistresses on the side in all of those situations where the real love happened. I'm being playful.
The wives and the husbands were just choosing their lovers.
But I believe that you can choose love and mature into love in most relationships.
Yeah. And I think that there's something to be said for starting to understand and being self-aware. And I wanted to mention this because me and Justin got married. I still chose emotionally unavailable guy friends. So it didn't solve magically because I married you. Yeah. And it wasn't actually ever the romance of it. No. It was the codependent pull. I was drawn to self-absorbed people. I just was. Men, women, like if there's a self-absorbed person that I'm going to find them and I'm going to fix them. And I think by fixing them, it'll fix my mom who I could never fix. I think by fixing them, it will fix my dad who I could never fix. Like that's the subconscious belief system. And so it's helpful to know because once I knew it, I began noticing it and ending it right away. Like I went through a season where I ended like probably 5 relationships where I was like, oh, I just stay in this. You're my prototype. You're my, like, I have a type. Yeah. I can find them in any room.
And part of what we're talking about, you might be asking, why am I listening to this episode?
Yeah.
What is this really all about? Is it about relationships? Part of it is it's really about the games we play.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're highlighting. Like, why am I doing what I do? How do I function? What's happening in my relationships? What is this game that I've built my life around? Is my game built around my insecurities, my fears? Is it about trying to win and find approval? And if we can find out the game we're playing, we can begin to deconstruct that game.
Yes.
And stop living a lifestyle of games and actually live a lifestyle of vulnerability and true intimacy.
Yeah, because I would say I could understand the codependency. I could understand Jessica and Kelly, who both, it felt like, didn't know how to be around a good guy. Like they didn't know how to bond to somebody who genuinely liked them and was interested in them and wanted to be around them. You could tell that it felt like that. But I knew when I was younger, okay, I'm drawn to this. And so because of the self-awareness, I let my friends know, hey, I'm drawn to this. Help me notice if that's this type of person. And then, so I actually allowed people to give me feedback about that because I knew it about me. And because of that, I also learned to pay attention and then watch that thing in me. Oh, I'm feeling drawn to that person. Oh, I need to go comfort and take care of the little girl who's actually talking about her mom and dad, and it has nothing to do with this person.
Yeah, recently I was talking to somebody, and this wasn't in regards to really romantic relationships, although it was a little bit, but they talked about like, I keep getting drawn to the same types of people. I have the same friends over and over again who I love on them and they never love on me, and I don't get it. I don't understand why people don't choose me and don't love me the way I love them. Here's the deal, people. If you have these cycles that are clear, okay, I just see the same person. That is the biggest red blinking light in your life.
Yes.
That you are participating in a game that you can get out of.
Yes.
But the fear is that our prover comes in and tells us, this is your life. This is what it has been. This is what it always will be. It's your lot in life.
Yeah.
And we have to begin to go, if we can acknowledge, no, that's not my lot in life. It doesn't have to be this way. I just have an archetype inside of the game that I'm playing. I need to decide what kind of game I want to play, if any at all.
And really, I just need to go get healing for the little kid that keeps choosing these people.
Yeah.
When that kid gets healed, the kid will choose love. When our little kid inside of us, this is a funny way to say it, but like the part of us that is still broken or in pain from our childhood, when that part gets healed, it will always choose love.
Yep.
Like real, authentic love. This is why we created the Compassion Project, for this exact reason, to help people learn, how do I heal and love the little kid instead of blaming and constantly staying in relationship cycles over and over and over again. Compassion is the thing that disrupts the cycle. We help you in this series actually figure out, why are you doing what you're doing? What are the needs you're trying to get met? And how do you begin to agree with love over yourself, so that then when you believe you're lovable and worthy, you will always choose people who love you well. And I've seen it in my own life. The more I've grown, the more I've healed, and the more I've learned compassion and self-compassion. I talk about all of the ways to do that in Me and Justin in the series. But the more I've learned that, I have the highest quality of friends I've ever had.
Yep. Redefined everything. And speaking of that, so the person that I was talking to about their life and these cycles, they said recently, I decided that I was done with this. I was done with the game. I was done with the experience. And I'm not going to give myself away freely in all these circumstances. I'm not going to go pursue and chase these people down. And so they started going in and having conversations with all their foundational relationships saying, hey, I don't know why we experience exchanges like this, but I don't like it. And I'm done doing this. I love you and I would love to connect, but it's going to be on some different terms.
Right.
I'm not going to be the one calling you all the time. If you want to connect, you're going to have to make some phone calls to me.
Yes.
If you want help inside of your world, you're going to have to reach out and just want to help me occasionally and make yourself available on those terms. And all of a sudden, she could see these places where all the fear kept her in that modality because she'd wanted to fit into her family her entire life.
Yep.
And so her fear was, if I don't show up in this type of a role, I'm not going to fit in anywhere.
Right.
And so she decides to go, I don't care. I'm going to go love me. I'm going to go have compassion on me. I'm going to go connect to myself over here. And I'm going to rebuild what kind of relationships I bring in from now on moving forward.
Well, it's so interesting because that's what a lot of people do. I don't want to lose the crumbs of connection I have here. But here's what they don't realize. When you stand up and respect yourself, it will actually create respect that will build respect in other areas of your life. So you don't lose the crumbs, you actually gain. So actually we should talk about Mark in that situation, because both me and you were like wanting him to own his life.
Mark, be powerful for God's sakes. Tell her no more and walk out of this. Quit being trampled on.
Yeah, like I remember thinking, if you would respect yourself and set some boundaries,
oh my God,
I bet she would respect you.
She'd be like a puppy dog.
Yes.
At your side, because she'd be like, that's so hot.
Right.
But again, he thought, oh, if I butter her up, I'll be the best thing ever to you.
Now, again, I do want to say, I know that we're watching it and I know that they edit all kinds of things and maybe he did set tons of boundaries and we didn't see it.
Totally. That's a side note.
Just from what we are watching, that's what we felt.
And just so all you couples know, just in case some of you come on here in the future.
We loved you all.
We loved you all. But also we understand there's a lot of editing involved.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking this, though. I have compassion for every single one.
Yeah, I can see my humanity in almost every one of those stories, too. And that's a huge thing.
Oh, yeah. I'm like watching Carlton. I'm like, I remember times when I had so much shame. I was like literally repulsing people.
Oh, I remembered moments where I was blowing up in our relationship. I'm like, oh, I've been Carlton.
Oh, yeah. That actually, now that you say that, that was what you would do in our first year.
There were moments where I did that. And I'm like,
oh my gosh.
Everybody hates him right now, but I am him.
Oh yeah.
And there's so many of us that have been him.
I remember Gianna, who she blows up real intense at Damien. And there's points where you can see like she's giving him the hate eyes and she's like, you can feel like she's hardened. She is hardened. Mm-hmm. And I was like, it was so hard to watch because I was like, I know that feeling. I do that. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't do it as much anymore, but I did that a lot in our marriage in the beginning.
That was one of the most painful things is when I'd be like, you're looking at me like you want to end my life.
I know. And
you're like, I'm not saying anything.
When I saw her on that show, I was like, oh, I get it. So I'm sorry, babe. That must have really sucked. That would be painful. You can feel the shit. It's not just, I think, because when you're trying to manage your anger out, you're like, but I'm not yelling at you and I'm not cussing at you and I'm not doing anything mean. But the truth is, when you feel somebody remove connection, and I don't think she was doing it purposely. What she was doing, she'd removed connection because she'd put her wall up because she felt like she wasn't going to be okay. It was a protector that was protecting her. So I'm like looking at it and I have compassion. I have compassion for why I've done it. I've done it because I'm scared. I feel rejectable or abandonable. These aren't words, but
abandonable.
But I'm looking at it thinking, oh, that would be so painful because you can feel the connection is severed. Yes. I'm in the room with you, but I have severed connection with you.
Yep. And they're in full-blown abandonment. Right. Like you said, they're emotionally in full-blown abandonment. And now they're trying to figure out, what do I do when all love or any source has been cut off and I'm all alone? Yeah. So I'm sorry. Oh, that's very kind of you to say. Mm-hmm. And I want to add this to it. I think that when we as human beings watch reality shows like this and we cringe and we're like, oh, I can't believe they did that or whatever, we begin to see our own judgments. Right. And we start to see our own judgments about ourselves even. A lot of times we'll get like, ugh, I can't believe that person would do that. That's because we've done something like that and we've judged ourselves harshly for that. And so I ask myself when I watch things like this that sometimes are cringeworthy or bring up emotions, I'm like, where am I in that person? Right. Yes. That's why I'm saying I watched all of this. There wasn't one person that I judged. I was just enjoying watching them being like, oh, they're triggering. Oh, I know that happens when I trigger. Oh, they're in shame. Oh, that's what happens when I'm in shame. I actually used this show. I made all of the consultants I'm training now watch it so that we could go through, did you notice this trigger? Did you notice when this person triggered? Did you notice? Because it's just a good you see human dynamics. It's a lot of what relationships look like. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Anything else to add to that? I will say this. We really were the couple like Damien and Gianna, which I just felt like telling people, whether it's your friendships or the romantic relationship you're in, you can totally transform your life. Yeah. It doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter how crazy it starts. Wherever you are at in life, you can become whole. You can
grow the capacity to feel loved and be loved. You can grow the capacity to give love. You can learn good love. Like I look at Mark, who I think he actually genuinely cared for her. I remember thinking to myself, oh, if only she could choose somebody who genuinely loved her, I think it'd be really healing for her. Sometimes the people who love us most, we feel most uncomfortable with.
Oh, they feel the most dangerous.
They feel dangerous because they could get past our walls.
Uh-huh.
And then if we let them in, it could really destroy us. Now, sometimes when people feel dangerous, it's because they are.
As a random side note that kind of has something to do with this, but not, one of my favorite characters was Amber.
Yeah. Oh, because she was like who you dream of being.
Love Amber.
Because she's so honest.
She's just direct. She has no filter.
Yeah. And she's calling it like it is.
Some people look like they're annoyed with her, like even in Barnett's Family, at least the way they cut the show.
Yeah.
But she's just like, this is who I am. This is what I think about this. And I am not going to let this go by.
Yeah, you loved it. Your little 8 self. She had to have been an 8.
On the Enneagram, absolutely.
Yes, I'm sure she was. But what I was going to say is it doesn't really matter where you start. All of the couples had things that were good in their relationship and things that were a mess. That's every relationship. Welcome to humanity. You don't need to feel shame. However, you can always heal and grow and then create the kinds of relationships that you want to have in the future. So like one thing I would say for us is the more we healed up, we learned our triggers, we learned how to heal us and not blame our partner for why we're feeling what we're feeling, not blame our relationships. It changed the game. So I wanted to say one story about this. We had this guy who was doing the cameras for recording when they were recording a product for us. And him and his wife were separated, and we were talking about validation and compassion.
Yeah.
And how important this is in the process of relationships. And he was like, yeah, good. And so she ended up coming back, and they were in a huge fight. And he's like, I might as well just try this thing that they say that works. I might as well just try it and see what happens. So he starts, and she's like, are you making fun of me? Like he's trying this compassion, this validation, this attunement that we teach in the compassion series. And he's like, no, I'm not. And he keeps going. And then she starts crying. And she just melts down.
Over the next couple days.
Her whole heart softens towards him. It changes. He recognizes like, oh, wow, this is how we can process through our pain together. He does it with his kids. He goes and he talks with his children. And he's like, this is how like I've affected you. And I'm really sorry. And his kids cry he cries. His kids cry. He hadn't cried in 9 years. Or something like that.
Quite a few years, yeah.
When this had happened, and him connecting to compassion opened up his heart for him to be. And so all of a sudden, they were able to have intimacy and have bonds and begin to break down the walls that separate us. And in the show, you can see when people have connection on versus walls up. And so that teaching is in the compassion series. We go in depth on attunement. We talk about validation, why you do what you do, why you trigger, what needs are actually going on. And all of it's based on compassion. So helping you not hate yourself for why you always choose somebody who's unavailable, or helping you not hate, like your mom. We've walked her through the ways that she triggered at you guys. Well, that's because she had a lot of pain that she needed to deal with.
Yeah.
And when we've been able to go back and help her see that pain, then she got healed from it. And so then she's free from the shame. So the compassion series is out. It is maybe one of the most powerful thing I think we've released.
Yeah.
One of them, Living Fully Alive, is also pretty powerful. So I don't know, but I feel excited about it. And I just it's hopeful because we're talking about relationships. No matter how you're stuck, if you begin to learn love and it will transform everything.
And you don't have to play the games anymore. So stop the games. Today is us saying, stop the games, get the healing, get the freedom, and build the life that you want to build. So you can go to stumblconsulting.com if you want to check out the Compassion Project, and peace out.
Peace out.